how things start. So Ron, it's great to have you chatting with us today. Really appreciate it. And
Pleasure.
maybe we could start off with a little bit of an overview. You're a not-for-profit charitable organization. You operate independently from government. But what is the relationship like between Canadian Blood Services and government? Is there regular communications? What's the relationship like?
Yeah, so good question. We were a bit of an anomaly in Canada in the sense that we are funded by the provinces and territories, and we are regulated by Health Canada as a biologics manufacturer. So we already have a formal relationship. The ministers of health are actually the members of the corporation. So they are the owners of the blood system, but they wear that hat independently of their role as the Minister of Health. So we're not a creature of government, although we are very much funded and regulated by them. So yes, there's ongoing communications, I would say, both at a programmatic level, at executive level. We have regular touch bases with the deputy ministers and our CEO, and our comms to comms folks also are frequently in contact, because we have joint files that are of interest to the public, to the media, and we want to make sure that we're well coordinated, and I think we try to operate on a no surprises basis.
Right. Okay. And in any communications office, any public affairs office, there seems to be no typical day. What are some of the daily routines that may typify your public affairs office?
Yeah, and maybe I'll try to blend this between the world pre-COVID and the world of COVID. Mm-hmm. I think no matter what, there's probably an array of activities. A lot of it you kind of come to mind is environmental scanning. So you got your social media and your media monitoring, listening to what people are saying. You're looking at, in our case, we're also looking at feedback that we get through our National Contact Center. We're looking at exit, from donation feedback. So what's top of mind for folks? We're looking at our staff surveys, our employee sentiments as well. So yeah, there's a lot of monitoring. There's a lot of analysis that goes on. Mm-hmm. I would say that there's always some writing going on, some storytelling of some kind. We have story meetings to talk about what, not unlike a newsroom, where we would look at what are the key topics that we're looking at covering this quarter, what are the things that are important to the organization, and how are we going to wrap that around with some good content. And yeah, so I'd say that there's a lot of planning that goes into the work as well, whether it's for events or whether it's for handling different files and preparing for an issue that's brewing by making sure we have the right key messages, Q&As, that our frontline staff are equipped with the latest information to talk to our donors and our customers. So yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes on as well.
Mm-hmm. A lot of analysis, a lot of planning. And I know you have a very strong focus on donors and supporters. What is it like when you're building and maintaining links to people through communications?
So, I'll broaden the communications to, both what you would see as traditional PR as well as stakeholder engagement and marketing, if you want. I think we have an objective. Listen, we talk about the end-to-end supply chain of, starting with a donor and finishing with a recipient, all the partners along the way being Canada's lifeline. Well, that lifeline doesn't start until you have a generous donor who's offering their blood, plasma, stem cells, organs, and tissues to someone who's in need, and it's their medicine, and they give it away for free. So it all begins with the donor. So we want to make sure that our donors have an experience that is personal, that is easy, and that they feel valued. That is our kind of mantra of our donor aspiration, our donor promise. So keeping in touch with them, knowing them. We're talking of 450,000 people, so there's an element of mass, but it's mass customization and mass personalization. You got to know, you got to segment your audiences. You got to think about what's relevant to them, understand the donor's profile, and there's an element of stewardship there too, because there's some folks that we're trying to scale up their commitment, either into different programs or to different ways of giving, or sometimes people age out of a certain program and we want to direct their support to another. So I'd say that it's evergreening, it's continuous, and we're trying to make it much more data-driven as well.
Right. Okay. Now, I know you talked about planning analysis. I wonder if you could just provide a breakout of the various functions of the public affairs office. Do staff members, are they specialists? Are there generalist roles? What do they do?
Yeah, so in our shop, public affairs is as quite a distinct areas of practice. So we have your typical government relations shop. We would have a typical comms shop with internal, external issues management. Mm-hmm. We have marketing as well, philanthropy, and stakeholder engagement, brand management, corporate social responsibility. So everyone has their, if you want, swim lanes, but we still operate at the leadership level as a cabinet. So we really think about issues and how they cross all the functions of public affairs at CBS. And we try to work off a single kind of yearly plan and strategy that is cascades down from our corporate strategy. So we have experts in their areas of practice, but I expect us to be thinking of the holistic approach of our reputation across all of our stakeholder groups. Mm-hmm. That said, if I had a wand and could do things and create a new structure tomorrow, I would probably build in a lot of generalists too. A lot. Well, certainly enough that you could float some people from one portfolio to another when you're seeing activity really stress one side of the business versus the other. Because if you're too specialized, then it's harder to move resources around when you're impacted differently. And we've certainly seen that during COVID. I think there's been times where we've needed much more help on one side of the business. And, you bring in contractors and other people that maybe don't know the organization as well. Mm-hmm. So if you had a bit of a SWAT team or a pool of generalists that can move with where the bullets of work are, to me, that would be a really interesting model, kind of a hybrid.
Yeah. Now, a common adage today is that there's no more social media or mainstream traditional media. There's just media. And how significant is the growth of social media, and how important is it to the communications function today?
Well, maybe I'll just share that. I think when I was in university and when I was coming out of university, I had predicted that this email thing would never work or the internet thing would never work. And then later on in my career, I said, who's going to post their life online with social media? No one's. So maybe I'm not the best futurist in this domain, but no, it is an important part of our business. We do a lot of active listening. I think it's an opportunity to hear what your customers are saying about you, how they're interacting with you. I think it's brought opportunities too to share storytelling and content. Mm-hmm. I do think there's a difference between traditional media and social media in the sense that traditional media still has an editorial function of vetting the stories, fact checking, and in this day and age, that you don't know what you're reading online and who's publishing it and what sources they've used. So I think you got to be careful as a consumer. Mm-hmm. That said, your media strategy has to be a holistic one, even if executing it might be different in one channel versus another. But social is a very important part of our business. A great way to reach a lot of folks. Mm-hmm. But you also need to understand that when you play in that space, you're relinquishing control of your brand, right? Take a paid advertisement, you control the content. Mm-hmm. Once you do earn media and once it's past the editorial process, then they kind of control some of the content there. But when it's out in the social domain, you're relinquishing that control. And I think sometimes that's a good thing. And then people metabolize it, make it their own, but there's also risks that come along with that.
Right. Okay. Now, are there issues or crises that you have to handle, and how do you handle them? What's that like?
Yeah, I don't think a day goes by without a mini crisis. And, I think we've seen things that happen that are event-based, like, a building goes down because of power or, there's in some cases in my previous career, there was things like bomb threats at different facilities. So there's event-based things. Then you layer on top of that, this smoldering crisis that is the pandemic. And that's been a real learning for a lot of us because, at first it's adrenaline. It's everyone drops their job descriptions and it's team and it's everyone focused on a single overriding priority when there's that introduction of risk. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we did. We said, okay, everyone put down your pens on what you were working on before. formed a crack team, and everyone was in on that, and daily meetings more frequent. But as time goes on, you realize, wow, okay, that is really designed for an event-based, short time period. And now what you've got is this smoldering crisis that's been going on for months and months and months, and the introduction of regular business or strategic work that's trying to compete for those same resources. So that, I think, is throwing a lot of PR and communications and public affairs professionals for a little bit of a difficult ride, especially in areas where resources are fixed and you're on the public dime. It becomes more challenging to balance the workload of the smoldering crisis with the reintroduction of daily business. So, right. Yeah, in terms of a principle, I think what I said, it's all hands on deck. That said, we still think it's important to fence resources to keep working on strategic work. So smaller teams that never touch crises, because my theory is crisis communications and issues management will suck every ounce of oxygen out of a room that you let it. So unless you protect some resources and put a hard fence around them, right. I think it's hard to keep the strategic work moving when any day you could have a crisis happen.
So you will try to compartmentalize it, have some small teams that are focusing on that crisis, and then of course you've got resources and you've got other things that you need to look after as well.
For sure, yeah, and I think there's, it tends to draw in people depending on the scale of the crisis. But what I try to do is identify some people and say, you will never be part of crisis communications and management deliberately, because if not, we will never keep this other important work of the organization going.
Right. Okay. Now, do you have an example of a particularly challenging communications issue that you had to manage, and what was it like?
So listen, there's been an array, over the years. Certainly, we've had product recalls. So where things were, we didn't follow process. So given the history of the blood system, that was pretty challenging. When all of a sudden you're saying that perhaps these products aren't meeting specifications, and so people that have received them start getting worried. There's been data breaches or privacy leaks that we've had over the years that have presented their challenges. Again, no ill will, but sometimes things happen, and as a result, you take a bit of a hit in terms of your trust and confidence. One of the, I'd say, more contentious and maybe public issues, and certainly well heard about it, is our donor deferral criteria. So we have to, we do state-of-the-art testing, which is the best that you can get around the globe, but it's not perfect. So since it's not perfect, we have to make choices about who can and cannot give blood, plasma, stem cells, organs, and tissues. And what we use is epidemiology and assess who are the most risk-free donors to start off with. It doesn't mean that the people that are excluded are risky, but you're starting off with the most risk-free in case anything else happens down the road. And certainly for 20, 30 years, there's been a deferral, or people call it a ban, on men who have sex with other men from donating blood in the system. And that's been a very tough file for us to manage, because we know how it impacts people. It's very personal. On the flip side, we also understand the rationale and the evidence and the science that was put in place in the first place, and how we've tried to evolve it over time. But it's clearly not moving at the pace we would like it to, or that our stakeholders expect us to. So it's a challenging file. I think a lot of us in public affairs, want a very inclusive environment, but we also understand that given the history of the blood system, any changes we want to make have to be supported by evidence and science.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. Now, I just have one last question, and that is, what is the best part of your job?
Well, that's an interesting question. I thought about that, and to me, it's pretty cool to be part of a team whose mission it is to save lives. So at the end of the day, when I think about it, maybe me and my team are not drawing the blood out of people, but we're inspiring. We're inspiring people to have confidence in the organization. We're nudging them to turn those good intentions into action. And I think it's pretty cool at the end of the day that that as the politics of the world are really driving polarization and focusing on what makes us different, our cause is one that talks about what we have in common, our biology, and how your blood or stem cells or whatever are the medicine to keep me alive. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white, if you're male or female, if you're from this community or that community, we all share a biology that can help someone else. So I think that's a pretty cool part of our job.
It's a great thing. Yeah. So Ron, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate the opportunity to ask you these questions. And I wish you all the best. And I know that, you've got a lot of things to juggle, but you're doing a great job. The organization is doing a fantastic job. This is great to see.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate your support, and never a dull moment.
No, thank you.